Before the flood, when giants walked the clay, the Hebrew word Gever, commonly translated as strong man, warrior, or mighty one, emerged as more than a word. Spelled Gimel Bet Resh, it was a shape of being, a triad of soul, sinew, and stature. Each of its letters carries within it a symbolic field. Gimel, which is pronounced as G, evokes the motion and meaning of bestowal, movement, or strength, the giving force that travels like a camel bearing gifts across the desert of becoming. Bet, or B, evokes the house, the container, the form, the interior space that holds intent and gives shape to potential. And Resh, that's R, is the head, the beginning, the rising crown, or sometimes the fall, the reversal into humility. Together they do not merely spell a man, they configure one. To read the word Gever is not to spell out an identity, but to activate a pattern, a living tension between action, form, and emergence. Each of the logical triads explored here offers a different dynamic configuration, some linear, some cyclical, some paradoxical, and in each, the man who would be Gever stands in relation to strength, structure, and sovereignty. The first pattern is called coexistence, a formulation that affirms a complete interdependence among the three components. In logic, this means each element implies and is implied by the others. Strength supports will sustains rule, rule confirms strength. Nothing stands alone. Gimel is strength, the raw vitality and force that moves. Bet is will as form, the structure or vessel that gives strength a place to dwell. Resh is dominion, the state of realized emergence, of standing at the head. In the pattern of coexistence, these are not linear steps but mutual supports. Strength without will is wild and spent. Will without emergence is passive and crushed. Emergence without either is a hollow crown. The Gever who walks this path knows he cannot rely on one virtue alone. He becomes man not by force alone, not by discipline alone, not by dominance alone, but when each holds the others aloft. The moment one fails, the others begin to collapse. This is the image of the arch, each stone held in place by the pressure of the others. Thus manhood in this vision is not brute stability, but dynamic mutual dependence, a trinity in tension. The lesson is simple but demanding. No trait alone can crown a man, only their coexistence can. The next pattern is reinforcement, a closed loop in which one aspect gives rise to the next, which then gives rise to the next, which in turn regenerates the first. Here, the movement begins with bestowal, Gimel's generous motion outward. That giving is not wasted. It takes on form as Bet, the house, the vessel. But a vessel filled too long begins to crack, and so from structure arises reversal. Resh as the poverty or undoing that comes when form is overfull or unexamined. Yet in that very reversal is the lesson that giving must begin again. The Gever here is a man whose journey is cyclical, not linear. He does not become something once and forever. He becomes by repeating, by falling and rising, giving and losing, forming and breaking. His strength is not in avoiding the cycle, but in yielding to it consciously. He is forged in overflow and strain. He gives, finds himself shaped by what he gives, and eventually must learn to give again, not from excess, but from wisdom gained in collapse. He becomes man, not by holding still, but by enduring the cycle without bitterness. He does not fear reversal, he expects it, and in that expectation, he is able to grow. The third pattern is causal, a straightforward chain of cause and effect. In this formulation, the absence of a beginning necessarily means the absence of the end. Motion leads to form, form leads to emergence. The man who moves, that is, who bestows, acts, initiates, is the man who begins to build a world. That action takes shape in form, in structure, in the disciplines and constraints of life. It is from that structure that something new begins: dominion, destiny, rule. Without action, there is no form. Without form, there is no future. The Gever here is a man who knows that beginnings matter, that everything downstream depends on what he initiates. A motionless man, a passive man, cannot build anything that will stand. His structures will be empty, his rule imaginary. But the man who dares to act will see his house rise. He knows that stepping forward is not just movement, it is foundation, and from it the head rises. The lesson is as old as Genesis. The world begins when someone moves. So, a more complex and indirect pattern is nonlinear, where the beginning and the end are linked directly and the middle, the structure, sort of arises later as a consequence. In this formulation, the man's strength, which is Gimel, precipitates a reversal, Resh. His own power actually topples him, or just pushes him past balance. But from that fall comes a new form, the interiority of Bet, the structure of humility, the vessel shaped not by ambition but by undoing. This is the pattern of the man who is broken and rebuilt. He begins with power, and that power is just too much. He falls, fails, or is reversed. But in that reversal, he gains something more precious than the might he lost, a form that can hold wisdom. The Gever in this pattern isn't the man who never falls, but the man who falls and is made real by it. His shell cracks, and what emerges is not less than before, but more. The inner soul takes shape only when the outer force yields. He is the man who walks through his collapse with open eyes, and who finds in that collapse the seed of his true self. The inclusive pattern now is one of nested completion. Each element leads to the next, and the final one it contains and affirms the previous two. In this formulation, giving, Gimel, leads to structure, Bet, and structure leads to dominion, Resh. But that dominion isn't an independent thing. It actually includes and depends on both. The Gever who reaches the throne does so not by accident, but because he's already given and built. And once there, he must continue to hold those within him. His authority is not raw power, but the sum of his generosity and order. This is a model of kingly manhood, the ruler whose crown is a composite of sacrifice and discipline. He is not crowned because he demands it, but because he embodies what is needed, the hand that gives, the will that builds, the strength that bears the name. The lesson here is one of completeness. One cannot simply arrive at dominion. One must earn it through giving and form it through structure, and carry both always. In the conjoined pattern, the central element, structure, becomes the bridge between strength and emergence. It is the midpoint, but also the proof that both beginning and end are aligned. In this vision, the Gever's strength, Gimel, is not random but directed, and his emergence, Resh, is not accidental but earned. Both point back to structure, Bet, the form that binds and bears them. His structure is what tells the story of who he is. What he has built is what reveals what he has endured and what he has become. He is shaped by the power that drove him and by the goal he moves toward. But the shape itself is the testimony. The lesson is not simply about balance, but about discernment. The man must ask, what structure have I built? What do my choices show? The Gever is not simply a man who acts, but a man who leaves form in his wake, and that form reveals his truth. The harmonic pattern brings forth paradox. Each pair gives rise to the third. Bestowal and form yield reversal. Reversal and form yield bestowal. Bestowal and reversal yield form. The triad is self-generating through contradiction. The Gever here is a man who learns that his life cannot be resolved into neat categories. To give may lead to loss. To lose may make room to give. To build may require reversal. Each of these contradictions is not a failure of manhood, but its refining fire. He learns that paradox is not the enemy of truth, but the womb of it. He becomes man not by picking a single path, but by holding tension faithfully. His manhood is not a straight line, but a song, one with dissonance, minor keys, and unexpected returns. And in that music, he becomes whole. Convergent logic asserts that each part of the triad implies the whole. To act is to necessitate structure and emergence. And to build structure is to demand action and purpose. To emerge as a head is to imply a beginning and a process. In this pattern, nothing is isolated. The man who builds just can't pretend he has not acted. The man who rules can't pretend he was not first a giver. The Gever in this triad is one whose parts are inseparable. His life cannot be broken down into fragments. Every action implies a shape, every shape implies an outcome, and every outcome implies the earlier steps. He is a man of consistency. His life tells one story, not several. And that story moves with a unity that just can't be faked. The lesson here is about integrity. Wholeness not as perfection, but as internal coherence. In the combination pattern, the logic turns on dependence. Certain pairs must be present for the third to exist. If strength and will align, reversal is excluded. But break either, and reversal just floods in. The Gever here is defensive. He holds what he holds so that he does not fall. His strength and form are not just good, they are necessary. If either breaks, the system collapses. Manhood, in this configuration, is fragile. Not because it is weak, but because it depends on coordination. It must be held together with care. The lesson is one of discipline. Strength must be ordered, will must be maintained, or shame will enter. The Gever does not take his name for granted. He earns it by holding the lines that would otherwise unravel. Association speaks of spark and activation. Certain combinations ignite beginnings. Giving and building birth a start. Emergence and giving require form. Form and emergence call back to the first gift. The Gever here is the man who knows what must be joined. He understands that beginnings are not stumbled into. They are activated by aligning the right inner forces. The right action without the right structure is wasted. The right structure without a spark of giving is hollow. But together they light the dark. This is the man who initiates rightly, who doesn't just begin, but begins well. His manhood is an ignition, and he knows how to strike the flint. The final triad, integration, gathers it all. Strength leads to form leads to dominion, but only if all are working together. The absence of anyone collapses the whole. The Gever here is not ruled by impulse, nor by rigidity, nor by desire for power, but by the alignment of all three. He gives, he builds, he rises, but always with the awareness that none of these can be left behind. He is moving root, throne, and shelter. A man who holds force, shape, and destiny in one breath. His lesson is the most difficult. Do not fragment. Do not pick the easiest trait and live from it. Be strong, be structured, be sovereign, all at once. Not perfectly, but integratedly. The word Gever is not simply a noun. It is a summons. Its letters do not describe a man so much as invite one, to give without self-loss, to build without becoming brittle, to rise without falling into tyranny. Each logical pattern above shows a different dance between Gimel, Bet, and Resh, a different possibility of how manhood might move, fail, ascend, break, or complete itself. But in each, the lesson is the same. The man is not one thing. He is the space between three. He becomes himself not when he clings to one letter, but when he walks the path between them. The Gever, then, is not just the man who stands. He is the man who twists and turns within the triad, who finds his name not in arrival, but in dynamic balance, a living strength that gives, shapes, and becomes.